G'day, welcome back. Today I'm returning to one of my more sort of occasional video series where I look more at the software side of chess and particularly chess engines. How are they so powerful and what different features of the software make them particularly strong. This actually links back to an earlier video which I did, the one where I disabled the chess engine in terms of being able to take en passant. I think I called that one Thou Shall Not En Passant. And came up with the idea that's worth about 150 points of ELO strength, which I thought was quite an interesting observation in its own right. And basically today I'm doing the same thing, except this time we're going to look at castling, the right to castling. How much is that worth? And I was going to use this as a bit of opportunity to sort of go over a quick bit of the history of castling itself. So let's just switch over to my capture screen. A little bit different today. This is not my main capture screen. Back to the sort of software side of it. I've explained I use VirtualBox and do all the compilation of SCID or Stockfish or so on within VirtualBox. And I've got a separate VirtualBox here. I mean, you can set one up in 50 gig inside a Windows machine. And this one has cutechess and the engines I play around with. So that's sort of my sort of engine testing rig. And this video today, it's kind of partly been inspired by this No Casting Chess promotion by Vlad Kramnik a couple of years back. The idea is that you take away the right to castle, and that has a couple of impacts. One of them is that opening theory is kind of out the door for a while until people do it again, and also because king safety is much more of an issue, you'd think that games are more dynamic and there are more winning opportunities. And actually, there was a big study done by chess.com and DeepMind and all those guys into no casting chess. It's a variant you can play on those chess.com websites and so on. But they just sort of thought about, well, actually, so you can play no casting chess, but now what's the question? How much is the right to castle worth if you're just thinking about a typical chess game? So castling, we all know what it is. Because I get a bit fixated on the history of chess, I thought actually it's a good opportunity just to review where castling came from. And this is just the Wikipedia page. You can see there the idea was originally a king's leap. That's what it was originally called, a king's leap. And the first move, the king could be this jump. It could be a knight jump, or it could be sliding across maybe a rook you'd already moved. So let's say you h1 rook on f1, and then you'd sort of do your king's leap over to g1. But you can see this. I find this chart here very interesting. It just shows you all the different variants of this king's leap concept, which different sizes, I think I would call, different variants of chess all around 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th century, mainly in Europe, before they finally come up with the sort of the definition of casting we have now, where it's got to be the first move the king, can't be through check, and all those sorts of things, can't be in check, and so on. You look at this, so you've got different combinations, different types of knight leaps, very interesting, and you see the different types of casting kind of represent strong areas of chess, England, Spain, France, but also Lombardy. I mean, we've come across a couple of studies by people in Genoa. That's not quite Lombardy, but it's pretty close to it. Northern Italy, a very wealthy area back in the day, and as with the other countries there, the nobility were quite interested in the chess and development of it, and they all sort of came up with their slightly different variants to try and make the game more interesting. Okay, so that's the background. Let me just close that. So I'm just quickly jotted down there. What we're going to look at here is that I'm going to set up an engine which can't castle and play that against an engine which can castle, and we'll kind of see what the results are. But I want to explain how this is done, so that if you want to sort of poke around with the same sorts of things in code, you can do that. It's probably best if you went back and looked at the Thou Shall Not En Passant video, but I'm just using Stockfish, and what I have done, let me just, you can see I've got different directories and I put different engines in different directories, and basically I just copied Stockfish and stuck it in a directory which I called King John. Now King John, I think he's famous for maybe losing castles, and Lacklander maybe didn't have many castles, so I thought that's the appropriate name for this engine. So basically we've got a version of Stockfish, and where Stockfish works, you've got the src, the source subdirectory, which has got all the code in it, so we pop into there, and it's actually search.cpp is where you need to make the change. And as with the en passant move, I can't actually make it an illegal move, but basically what I do is I make that this engine will never pick castling. It'll put it on the end of the list. So you can see this, you have to put this in two spots. If the move is castling, you continue, which means you don't consider the move. And I had to do it higher up, as one place higher up as well. Step 11 has the same little bit of code in it. Yeah, same thing. If the move is castling, don't consider it all, and that's all you need to do. Once you have done that, then mean, I've done it already, but what you run the make command, make field architecture is native. You can see it compiles things. Everything's been compiled already. So, and then that would create the file called stockfish. I've also changed, if you remember, misc.cpp had the name that you returned when you run it. So now I have a new engine. This engine cannot castle, and then you run that in cutechess. Just to show you the command I ran up here, cutechess, send the output.pgn. We'll have a look at some of the output in a sec. One engine is stockfish, the other engine, stockfish in the stockfish subdirectory, the other engine is stockfish in the King John directory. Both of them run on 2 threads, concurrency at 8, and I played 50 rounds. And then you do that, which is all quite interesting. And then what happens in the end, see how basically it's as many wins as draws for the stronger engine, which is basically a 200-point difference. So the idea is that being unable to castle loses you 200 points because you can't get king safety, you can't get your rook active, the main drawbacks. Now it's a bit unclear. I mean, according to the specs there, I'm not running with a opening book. I mean, obviously an opening book would kind of be some strange interference with the right to castle in terms of, you know, the strengths of the engines. Maybe a bit more testing there, but I think that's a pretty good summary of what we come up with. So 200 points. Where's that 200 points being lost? So the next thing to do is just to have a quick look at some of the games. Now, what I've done here is I've sorted out some of those games, and let's go to the end of the file, and it goes to the position in the game where the side who can castle has castle. So this is quite interesting. So Gandalf, he has castled, and now what does White do? Let's just have a look at the sort of the procedure of the game. I mean, White can't castle, so he's just sitting there in the middle of the board. Doesn't have a good way of getting to safety. Just go through this quickly. And so in this position, you can see, because he couldn't castle, White has then by default activated the rook by pushing the H pawn out of the way, and the king is kind of finding safety in the middle of the board. And this particular game ended up a draw. Let me just quickly go to the end of the position. Actually, ended in a perpetual check for White. Okay, so let's go back to the previous game, see what happened there. Don't save. So this is a loss. Let's see what happens. So you can see the situation here. It's sort of like we're still quite early in the opening. White has already been able to castle, and Black's looking a bit wonky on the E file. Just go through these moves pretty quickly. See, doesn't look good. The White king trapped in the middle of the board. Oh, but actually pieces are coming up now, so that position doesn't look quite so bad anymore. Well, White's won a pawn, so that's why White's a pawn up from the earlier in the opening. So the right to castle, that's probably why it lost it. Let's go back to another game. And Johns loses this one as well. I mean, he's played F3, obviously. Ben Feingold would not approve. And now it's going to get quite exposed down this diagonal. Quickly go through it, let's have a look, see what happens. Queens are off, it obviously helps somewhat, but anyway. I'm just trying to find out something a little bit more dramatic. Don't save. Okay, Black's just castled. White's sitting in the middle. This one's a draw. Oh, this is what I'm trying to look for. Something like that. This is effectively what White has to do. 1, 2. I mean, this rook's already active behind there, but basically that's 3 moves. 3 moves to castle, which obviously is a fairly big disadvantage. Try this one. You can just see generally what happens is Black just doesn't develop properly, and it does actually cause problems later on. I mean, this looks pretty bad now with the double E pawns like that. Just find another one. King's found some sort of not safety on the king side, and probably eventually loses because obviously the rook's busted through here already. Okay, I could do this all day. There are many games. Quite funny looking at these games. So just that's all I wanted to say today. Just sort of getting back into that mode of looking a bit more often at the the coding of chess. And this one, as I say, particularly what's the right castle worth? Well, it's around 200 points, and that means it's a bit more valuable actually than the en passant right, which makes sense because en passant tends to be kind of a specific thing in specific positions. Doesn't say a lot about a king safety or being several moves behind tempo in terms of developing when you're opening, or as you saw in a lot of these examples we just went through, the king just sits in the middle, which longer term the engine attacking it probably find much more opportunities to force the win. Great. Okay, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much for watching.